Honorable Professor Dr. Sajid Mahmood Shehzad, Vice Chancellor, Minhaj University, Lahore. Vice Admiral Ahmed Saeed, former President NEMA. Rear Admiral Atikur Rahman, General Manager Operations, Karachi Port. Rear Admiral Muhammad Khalid, DG Operations, Port Qasim Authority. Barrister Nudrat Majid Saiba, Maritime Law Expert. Mr. Kashif Meher, Honorary Counsel, Kyrgyzstan. Mr. Muhammad Jameel Ahmed, Chairman, Pakistan International Freight Forwarders Association. Mr. Humayun Akhtar, DG Lahore Marina Club. His Excellency Miss Sajjad Ashraf, former Ambassador. Honorable guests, faculty members, representatives of various national institutions, and dear participants of this conference. By the grace of Almighty Allah, this is the 4th year that we all are here attending this Maritime Affairs Conference at Minhaj University, Lahore. CRIMA, a beautiful, innovative center which was established at Minhaj University, Lahore around 5 years ago. And this is the 4th year that this center has been hosting this international conference and much more during these years. This is truly tremendous and great contribution of our faculty member, but most importantly, our worthy Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Sajid Mahmood Shehzad. So he certainly deserves a lot of congratulations and appreciation for not just establishing this initiative at Minhaj University, but supervising all such activities taking place under this center, including this beautiful conference. And conferences cannot become successful ones without great partners and intellectuals who become part of such initiatives. So certainly all those great participants, experts, professionals, representatives of public and private sector of Pakistan who have been and are part of this initiative since its inception. So I would like to thank all of you for your contributions and support you all have been providing and giving to Minhaj University through CRIMA. And all the team members, the organizing committees, who have been certainly active throughout these years, organizing such events for the awareness of such an important topic, which is, I believe, the future of Pakistan. So I would like to congratulate all the management teams who have been part of this administrative secretariat of this conference. I'm sure in last 2 days of this conference, there has a lot of discussions going on the subject, such as water as a resource and how we can protect it, not just in Pakistan, but through our behaviors worldwide. Instead of just speaking on the subject, I am sure a lot has been said on it, because this is a platform, a conference organized by CRIMA, which deals with blue economy. As we all have entered in a year 2026, so I thought to give you a little analysis that what we have gone through in year 2025 in terms of blue economy and policies in Pakistan and worldwide, and what we all are entering into in the year 2026. And what are those important areas in which important initiatives must be taken by Pakistan to survive this year and many more to come, especially when we talk about blue economy and maritime affairs. Dear audience, as the blue economy stabilizes at a projected growth rate of roughly 3.3%, the maritime sector, which serves as a physical circulatory system for over 80% of global merchandise trade, is being forced to navigate a landscape defined by radical uncertainty. The era of predictable, efficiency-driven logistics has definitely ended, replaced by a paradigm of resilience and redundancy, necessitated by chronic disruptions in critical choke points and weaponization of supply chain. In year 2026, the macroeconomic forces are reshaping trade flows where the demand for shipping capacity measured in ton miles has surged disproportionately to trade volumes due to security-driven rerouting away from Red Sea and other contested zones. It scrutinizes the decarbonization trajectory of International Maritime Organization as industry faces critical interim choke points in 2026, grappling with a fragmented order book of alternated fueled vessels and looming reality of carbon pricing. It also becomes important to explore the continued frontier of deep sea mining, where International Seabed Authority remains deadlocked on a mining code while facing unilateral challenges from major powers and private entities. In the light of global currents, today we analyze Pakistan and we see that maritime at 100 and Vision 2035 strategies, including the transformative sea to steel industrial corridor against the backdrop of severe hydro-political crisis following India's unprecedented suspension of Indus Water Treaty in April 2025. Finally, we would also like to explore today the emerging potential of Islamic blue economy, exemplified by blue sukuk and ethical frameworks like Amana, as a vital mechanism to bridge the financial gap for sustainable ocean governance. Dear audience, by January 2026, the global economy has defined earlier predictions of synchronized recession, stabilizing into a period of steady but starkly divergent growth. According to the International Monetary Fund's IMF and World Economic Outlook update for January 2026, global output is projected to grow by 3.3% in 2026 and 3.2% in 2027. This resilience is largely underpinned by robust investment in technology, particularly the generative artificial intelligence sector, and broadly accommodative financial conditions that have helped to offset the headwinds of increasingly fragmented trade policies and tariff wars. However, this aggregate stability masks profound regional disparities that have significant implementations for maritime demand. Advanced economies are witnessing a gradual return to target inflation rates, with United States projecting a soft landing supported by fiscal stimulus and strong consumer spending. In contrast, emerging markets face more volatile trajectory befitted by debt distress, currency fluctuation, and high cost of capital. The IMF notes that while global headlines inflation is expected to decline from an estimated 4.1% in 2025 to 3.8% in 2026. The cost of living crisis remains acute in import-dependent developing nations, contrary their ability to participate in global trade. The Asia-Pacific region remains the primary engine of global growth. Through facing headwinds from slowing demand in Western markets, China having implemented significant stimulus measures in late 2025, is projected by growth of 4.5% in 2026. A slight upward revision that reflects state-led investment in infrastructure and green technologies. India continues to be standout performer with projected growth of 6.4%, driven by strong domestic demand, although it faces risks from rising protectionism in its export market. Conversely, the Eurozone remains sluggish, growing at just 1.3%, constrained by structural energy cost and lagging effects of monetary triggering. Dear audience, the most significant structural shift in maritime sector in 2026 is decoupling of trade volume growth from the demand for shipping capacity measured in ton miles. The persistent security crisis in Red Sea, which escalated throughout 2024 and 25, has forced a structural and likely semi-permanent rerouting of Asia-Europe trade around the Cape of Good Hope. Ships that once transited the Suez Canal in days now sail for weeks longer, fundamentally altering vessels' supply-demand dynamics. As of May 2025, Suez Canal transit levels were approximately 70% below 2023 average. That effectively removes vast amount of capacity from the market, as vessels are tied up for longer period to transport the same volume of cargo. Consequently, freight rates remain elevated and volatile, driven by supply constraint rather than robust consumer demand. This inefficiency has become a structural feature of 2026 maritime's landscape. The surge in ton miles is also driven by a reconfiguration of global energy market. Europe's decoupling from Russian energy supplies has necessitated long-haul, seaborne imports of LNG and coal from Americas, West Africa, and Australia, replacing shorter pipelines routes. Similarly, the United States has ramped up exports of LNG and LPG to Asia, further inflating ton miles as these vessels travel the Pacific or take a longer route around Africa to capacity constraint at Panama Canal. Dear audience, another factors driving maritime proximity in 2026 is the emergence of connector economies such as Vietnam, Mexico, India, and Poland, as major powers like USA and China, they enacted tariff barriers and pursue friend-shoring strategies. Global supply chains are lengthening rather than shortening today. Components are often shipped from China to these intermediate hubs for assembly or processing before being re-exported to final markets in the West. This adds additional legs to the maritime journey, increasing port calls and transit shipment volumes, even as a direct bilateral trade between the superpowers are stagnant today. United Nations Conference on Trade and Development notes that this fragmentation is leading to a restructuring of global linear network. East-west routes remain dominant, but they are increasingly augmented by complex north-south and intra-regional feeders network designed to serve these connector hubs. This shift requires significant investment in port infrastructure in developing regions, which often lack the capacity to handle the surge in transshipment traffic. Consequently, port congestion has become a chronic issue. Average port waiting time in developing countries rose to 10.9 hours in early 2025, widening the efficiency gap with developed nations. In 2026, the maritime industry operates in high-cost, high-volatility environment, unlike the demand-driven super cycle of 2021. The current rate environment is supply-constrained and politically driven. Freight rates swing widely based on regional security flare-ups, such as June 2025, tensions near the Strait of Hormuz, a vital choke point for oil and LNG, rather than fundamental changes in consumer demand. For developing nations, this volatility is devastating. United Nations Conference on Trade and Development also reported that the developing countries must now budget for freight costs that can fluctuate more in a week than they were previously did in a year. Small island developing states are particularly vulnerable, watching their import bills soar while their export competitiveness erodes due to the distance penalty imposed by rerouted shipping lines. The Maritime Transport Bill for many African and Caribbean nations has increased disproportionately, feeding into a domestic inflation and hindering economic recovery efforts. Dear audience, in 2026, the global shipping industry is also operating the intensified scrutiny of international maritime organizations' revised greenhouse gas strategy. The strategy adopted in 2023 set a trajectory for our industry to reach net zero emission by or around 2050, which critical interim choke point 20 to 30% reduction in GHG emission by 2030 and 70 to 80% reduction by 2040. 2026 serves as a critical review year for a carbon intensity indicator and the energy efficiency existing ship index regulations that entered into force in 2023. Whereas reports are suggesting otherwise, that the total shipping emission actually increased by 5% in 2024. This increase is attributed to longer voyages, necessitating by Red Sea crisis and a higher sailing speed adopted by containers lines to maintain weekly schedules on these extended routes. This creates a regulatory paradox. The legal framework demands efficiency and emission reduction, but geopolitics and political realities demand longer, more fuel-intensive voyages to maintain the fluidity of global supply chain. Dear audience, the European Union emissions trade system has fully integrated the maritime sector, forcing the operators to pay for carbon allowances for voyage to and from European ports. This has effectively put a price on carbon for a significant portion of a global fleet, creating a two-tier charter market. Modern, efficient vessels capable of minimizing ETS costs demand a premium for EU-linked trade, while older, less efficient tonnage is increasingly relegated to non-regulated routes such as intra-Asia or Russia global south trade. This phenomena raises concerns about carbon leakage, where emissions are simply displayed rather than eliminated. Debates regarding global economic measures have intensified in this year, 2026. Developing nations and small land islands, developing states are pushing for a high levy to fund a just transaction. However, major economies and industrial stakeholders remain hesitant. The lack of consensus on a global levy risks further fragmenting the regulatory landscapes as other jurisdictions consider implementing their own regional carbon pricing schemes. So in these circumstances, we can see that where this world is heading when the nations and states who are actually the stakeholders and their economies who are dependent on these resources. And on the other hand, the larger economies and nations whose political and geopolitical interests are being directly affected by such initiatives, both entities are not on same page. So the world is looking for a solution where something could be done to it, where all these initiatives and targets set that may be related to carbon emission or that may be related to the blue economy, other areas, they will be addressed only when both entities could come on the same page. The governance of deep ocean floor is another issue. Areas beyond national jurisdiction has reached a critical impasse in 2026. The International Seabed Authority, the UN mandated body responsible for organizing and controlling activities in the area, failed to adopt a mining code exploitation regulations during its 30th session in July 2025. This failure has left the nascent deep sea mining industry in a state of legal and operational limbo. During July 2025 session, the ISA Council engaged in intense line-by-line negotiations of the draft regulations, but failed to reach agreement on critical components, including environment threshold, financial payment mechanisms, and inspection regime. Consequently, the Council adopted a roadmap for the 31st session, which will take place in 2026, shifting to a thematic approach to resolve these outstanding issues. Dear audience, a defining development of 2025 and 26 period is erosion of multilateral consensus and the rise of unilateral in ocean governance. The The United States, which is not a party to United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, has moved aggressively to bypass the ISA multilateral process. In April 2025, the US administration issued an executive order to expedite domestic processing of deep sea mining licenses under the Deep Seabed Hard Mineral Resources Act. This domestic law allows US companies to mine the deep seabed in international waters under US regulations, ignoring ISA's jurisdiction. During July 2025, Session 39 member states and African group denounced the move as a violation of international law and principle of common heritage of mankind. This conflict represents a fundamental challenge to this act, an institution, regime, rising the specter of a Wild West scenario in the deep ocean where powerful nations exploit resources outside of international oversight. In this scenario and backdrop, if we talk about Pakistan, so against this global backdrop of volatile and governance challenges, Pakistan has launched an aggressive strategy to overhaul its historical underdeveloped maritime sector. The Maritime at 100 vision, unveiled by the Ministry of Maritime Affairs, set a transformative target of achieving $100 billion worth of blue economy by 2047, the century of Pakistan's independence, with significant intermediate milestones set for 2035. This plan aims to increase the maritime sector's share of national GDP from a negligible 0.8% to 2% by 2035. This shift represents a fundamental restructuring of economy towards export-oriented coastal industrialization. This vision targets national trade volumes exceeding $250 billion by 2035, facilitated by expanded port capacity and improved connectivity. Gwadar Port is projected to lead the country in cargo throughout 2030, serving as a primary gateway for transshipment cargo to Central Asia and Western China. Meanwhile, Karachi Port and Port Qasim are undergoing extensive modernization to double their effective capacity and improve efficiency. The National Fisheries and Aquaculture Policy 2025 to 2035 targets a doubling of seafood export within 1 year through the upgrading of cold chain logistics, deep sea fishing, fleets, and traceability certification. The flagship project of Maritime at 100 vision is the Sea to Steel Green Maritime Industrial Corridor at Port Qasim, announced in late 2025. This project represents a strategic integration of maritime logistics and heavy industry designed to address Pakistan's chronic balance of payment deficit. Dear audience, the revival of IOCB, the project centers on reactivating the iron ore and core berth at Port Qasim, which has been idle since 2015. This berth will transform into an anchor point for our new industrial zones. Dear audience, the Pakistan's National Shipping Corporation has embarked on an aggressive fleet expansion program to reduce country's reliance on foreign freight services, which currently drain billions in foreign exchange annually. The fleet is targeted to expand to 30 vessels by 2026, up from just 12 vessels in late 2025. The long-term goal is to expand the fleet to 80 vessels by 2035. In late 2025, PNSC also approved the acquisition of 3 tankers for approximately $193 million and launched tenders for 12 additional ships. This expansion is critical for Pakistan's energy security. By controlling a large share of its oil and LNG transport, Pakistan can insulate itself from extreme freight rate volatility observed in global market and ensure the continuity of energy supplies during times of geopolitical crisis. At the end, I would like to talk on Islamic blue financing, which could certainly benefit this sector of blue economy and maritime affairs. Dear audience, Islamic finance has emerged as a vital alternative for funding blue economy. The global Islamic finance market, projected to reach $8 trillion by 2030, offers a vast pool of capacity that is governed by principles of risk sharing, asset backing, and this prohibition of haram interest, making it naturally aligned with sustainable development goals. We have a beautiful example of Indonesia in front of us. Indonesia has set a global benchmark by issuing world's first sovereign blue sukuk series in 2023, raising $150 million. These proceeds were strictly ring-fenced for projects sustainable aquaculture. This issuance demonstrated the appetite of global investors for high-quality, impact-driven Islamic assets. Now, Pakistan is also exploring the issuance of its own blue sukuk to fund Maritime at 100 initiative. Potentially underlying assets could include land and infrastructure of new Port Qasim, industrial zone, or mangrove forest of Indus Delta, which generates carbon credits. This would allow Pakistan to tap into a liquidity of Islamic capital market in the Gulf and Southeast Asia to finance its maritime transactions without increasing its conventional debt burden. Beyond financial instruments, Islamic environmental ethics offer a comprehensive governance framework that challenges the extractive logic of modern blue economy. There is a concept in Islam called amana. This concept of amana posits that the human are steward, not the owners of these resources on the planet Earth. And they hold the natural world in trust for the Creator and for future generations. This industrial mining of deep sea bed violates the principle of amana as well, if it causes irreversible destruction to the common heritage, as a current generation do not have the right to destroy our resources they did not create. There is another concept in Islam, which is Hima, the protected zones. The traditional Islamic institutions of Hima allows for a designation of inviolable sanctions, sanctuaries, and zones where resources extraction is prohibited or strictly regulated for the public good. There is a model which has been practiced in MENA region and parts of Pakistan to create community-managed marine protected areas. Evidence suggests that the MPAs managed under HEMA framework enjoy higher community compliance than government-imposed zones because they are rooted in local culture and religious values. So institutions like Center of Research and Innovation in Maritime Affairs, which is CRIMA, at Minhaj University, Lahore, are playing a pivotal role in operationalizing these concepts through publications such as Journal of Nautical Eye and journal issued by ICRI, which is a Center for Research in Islamic Economics. So jointly, the works which are being taken up under these centers, they can come together to propose a new maritime policy which would accommodate enough Islamic religious ethics as well and principles, and at the same time, all those modern new approaches towards blue economy and its development. So the both centers at Minhaj University, Lahore, they are working together to develop such ethics which will include modern approaches as well as Islamic ethics. So the roadmap for Pakistan in the end, as we look forward towards 2030 and beyond, several actionable steps must be taken to ensure that Pakistan's green and blue economies thrive in a way that respects our philosophical heritage and modern scientific realities. The first one is institutionalizing the maritime education. Following the vision of Minhaj University, I propose that Pakistan Maritime Academy should be upgraded into a full-scale maritime university. This institution must integrate maritime science with the study of Islamic ethics and social finance. The second point, which I would like to propose here, is ratify and implement international conventions. Pakistan's recent accession to a Hong Kong Convention for ship recycling is a positive step. However, strict reinforcement at Gadani and Port Qasim is necessary to ensure that sea-to-steel projects do not become environmental hazard. The third point is establish a national blue finance framework. The government should collaborate with Islamic financial institutions in Pakistan to issue Pakistan's first blue sukuk. These funds should be directed towards expansion of PNSC fleet and restoration of coastal mangroves, which are vital for carbon sequestration. The fourth point is modernize water governance. The 1991 Water Accord needs a digital era upgrade. Establishing an automated real-time telemetry system for water distribution will reduce inter-provincial trust deficit and ensure that every drop counts. The fifth point is ban destructive deep sea mining. In line with the precautionary principles and Islamic environmental ethics, Pakistan should support a regional moratorium on deep sea mining until its environmental impacts are fully understood and controllable. The sixth point I propose here is a foster regional integration. Pakistan must leverage its position as a maritime bridge connecting Central Asia with Arabian Sea. This involves not only physical infrastructure, but also harmonizing maritime laws and regulations with regional partners. So at the end, the fourth International Maritime Conference at Minhaj University, Lahore, is more than just a gathering of experts. It is a manifestation of renaissance of knowledge that the MUL as well as Minhajul Quran International seek to foster. We stand on the shoulders of giants like Ibn Majid and Al-Jazari, whose scientific innovations were driven by a profound sense of divine purpose. In 2026, the challenges of climate change, water scarcity, and economic volatility are formidable. Yet, our history teaches us that with the right combination of philosophical clarity, scientific excellence, and ethical leadership, these challenges can be transformed into opportunities. the blue economy in our next frontier, and the green economy is our moral compass. By reclaiming our maritime heritage, embracing the innovation and innovative tools of the future, we can ensure that Pakistan and the wider Muslim world once again becomes a beacon of progress and a guardian of divine trust that is our planet's water. The path towards forward requires a shift from potential to progress. Let the deliberation of this conference serve as a catalyst for a sustainable, just, and prosper maritime future. In the end, I would like to once again thank all the honorable guests and participants of this conference for taking the time out to become a part of this very important initiative of Minhaj University, Lahore. I wish you all good luck, and especially all the wishes are for CRIMA, who are doing a wonderful job. Thank you very much, and wassalam.